Hello, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a truly mind-blowing biological anomaly, one that holds a pretty uncomfortable mirror up to our modern lives, our careers, and honestly, the crushing stress of the modern workplace. We're going to explore a concept drawn from a really profound piece of writing by Xu Feng, which basically forces us to ask, is our endless, exhausting pursuit of more actually the very thing that's destroying us? Think about it for a second. We arrive in this world with absolutely nothing, and we leave with nothing. Yet in between those 2 points, we spend decades just grinding away, totally obsessed with accumulating wealth, chasing job titles, and building this fortress of so-called security. So why the obsession? I want you to hold on to that question as we meet the absolute star of today's analysis.
Okay, let's dive into this. Meet the Sahara sand rat. According to an article referenced by our source titled The Anxiety of the Sand Rat, this is an unusually diligent little desert creature. Right before the harsh dry season hits, these rats just go into absolute overdrive. They work tirelessly, obsessively really, gathering and hoarding grassroots. I mean, they are basically nature's ultimate hustlers, working nonstop to make sure they are totally prepared for the worst.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer mathematical absurdity of what the sand rat actually does. It's staggering. Research shows that a single sand rat only needs exactly 2 kilograms of grass roots to survive the entire dry season. That's it. 2 kilograms is the baseline for absolute safety. But how much do they actually gather? 10 kilograms. They compulsively hoard 5 times the amount of food they actually need to survive. It's wild. And here is where the tragedy and honestly the painful irony really kicks in. Because they gather 10 kilograms, that massive excess of 8 kilograms, it just sits there and eventually it rots. So their relentless hard work is not only completely useless, but it actually creates more miserable, totally unnecessary labor for them later on. They now have to spend their precious, limited energy painstakingly cleaning those decomposed roots right back out of their burrows. Just think about how much of our own modern busy work or corporate red tape feels exactly like this. We're basically just cleaning up the rot of our own overaccumulation. But wait, it gets even stranger. In a really fascinating experiment, researchers placed these sand rats in cages and provided them with ample daily food. They were perfectly safe, perfectly fed, no predators, no starvation. But because they couldn't physically go out, gnaw off roots, and build up their massive hoard, they panicked. The rats didn't die of starvation. They literally died of severe anxiety. They died from the sheer panic of not being able to accumulate a massive, completely unnecessary surplus. So when we break down the true cost of their hoarding, it's pretty devastating. 4/5 of their work isn't just wasted, it's actively harmful. By relentlessly gnawing off those grass roots, they strip their own environment, making the desert even more barren than it already was. They are literally decreasing their overall chances of survival for the future. In their frantic, desperate quest for the illusion of safety, they're basically digging their own graves. Which brings us to the absolute most important pivot in our explainer today. We look at the sand rat and we think, wow, what a foolish, silly little creature, right? But as our source material asks point blank, if the sand rats are foolish, what about us humans? Are we actually operating any differently in our modern, hyper-competitive economies? Section 1. Modern Workplace Mirrors. The Human Sand Rats. The author of our source material points out several real-world examples of human sand rat anxiety. Think about those millionaire businessmen who already have enough wealth to easily support their families for life, yet they just can't stop tirelessly working day and night. Or what about frantic internet commenters, totally obsessed with giving their take on every single topic, completely consumed by this endless pursuit of engagement? Watching this endless, frantic toil, the author repeatedly asks one simple, cutting question. Why bother? Take the specific case outlined in the text of a 36-year-old vice director of a provincial finance department. He was at the absolute peak of his career, but deeply dissatisfied with his current hoard, he started taking bribe after bribe. And eventually, he was caught and sent to prison. He completely sacrificed his freedom, his prime years, and his entire life for extra roots he absolutely didn't even need to survive. Again, we have to look at this tragic self-destruction and ask, why bother? And then there's the heartbreaking story of a 23-year-old mother. Her present reality? She's young, and she has a perfectly healthy 1-year-old baby. But she wrote a letter crippled by paralyzing anxiety about how she would ever pay for that child's college tuition, an event that is literally 17 years in the future. So the crucial point is, why are we letting tomorrow's unwritten, unpredictable troubles completely ruin the reality of today? She is trapped in the cage of sand rat anxiety, panicking about a future that hasn't happened yet, instead of actually living her life.
Section 2. The cost of excess, macro consequences. Now zoom out for a second. Imagine an entire global workforce operating with this exact sand rat mentality. The global population grows and natural resources inevitably dwindle, but because of our psychological anxiety, our workplace stress, our fear of falling behind, our desire to hoard extra grassroots actually intensifies. It creates this terrifying vicious cycle. Even if we achieve peace and development, if humanity doesn't cure this underlying urge to stockpile excess, we will literally consume our own environment until the resources run out. And when the grassroots are gone, well, what happens to the rats?
We've actually seen this happen at scale. The source references an early 1980s mass purchasing frenzy, this massive nationwide panic where people just bought out goods entirely, out of fear that items would magically disappear or prices would skyrocket overnight. It wasn't driven by any actual immediate need. It was driven by pure, contagious fear. It was a flawless, large-scale demonstration of the sand rat mentality in action, across millions of people simultaneously.
Section 3. Wisdom for the present, curing the mentality. Now, the author is totally realistic and acknowledges that stepping off this corporate treadmill isn't as simple as just realizing you're on it. As the text puts it, it's easy to know the way, but it is incredibly hard to walk the way, and it is even harder to uphold it over time. Breaking our instinctual, almost biological habits of constantly worrying and perpetually gathering is really, really difficult work. But we have to try, don't we? Because the cost of failure is just too high. Excess is literally dangerous to life itself. Life is finite. If we focus entirely on accumulation, on the 9-to-5 grind and hoarding our metaphorical roots, we risk losing our most precious unrecoverable resource, our time. We miss out on the actual beauty of the present moment. And even worse, we miss the opportunity to elevate and sublimate our lives into something meaningful, far beyond mere survival. To combat this, the source points to timeless spiritual wisdom that has actually tried to warn us about this exact psychological trap for millennia. Take the words of Jesus in Partially Presented Here. Do not worry about tomorrow. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? It's such a powerful historical counterargument to modern workplace greed. Honestly, what is the point of gaining the entire 10 kilograms of roots if you entirely lose your mind and your life in the process? And this brilliantly illustrates that this wisdom is truly universal across human history. We can look to the teachings of Buddha, emphasizing the exact same profound cure. Live in the present, go with the flow, and follow the natural course of things. Do not panic in the cage about the roots of tomorrow, just be present with what you actually need today. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. We've seen how a tiny desert rodent can destroy its own environment and literally die of anxiety over surplus it never even needed. And we've seen how modern professionals destroy their prime years and their peace of mind doing the exact same thing in our hustle culture. Excess is genuinely dangerous to life. So, looking at your own calendar, your own workplace stress, and your own fears about tomorrow, tell me, are you a sand rat? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. See you next time.